Hi guys, if you didn't know, Girls Frontline 2 is coming out tomorrow morning or whatever time it is, but basically 7 a.m. EST, 4 a.m. PST, depending on where you are. Uh, I will include a link for the countdown in the description so you can find out for yourself. But today I wanted to go over some things you may not know about Girls Frontline 2, as well as a what you need to know before the game releases. With that, let's get into the first tip that I have for you, and that involves, well, the pre-download and also an introduction. If you aren't familiar with it now, you should probably get on it as of the release of this video. The game will be coming out very soon, and with it, we have the pre-download. You can download this off of the website, and I will include a link for this. But there is something that you need to know alongside downloading and starting the game for the first time, and that's an introduction to the servers. Now, I'll move my camera over here for a second so you can see what I'm referring to. But there are actually two different servers, well, technically two different servers that we're going to talk about here, and that's, well, specifically Dark Winter slash Sunborn, which is the global or described as the global servers, and then also Howplay, which should be all of Southeast Asia. Now, there are a couple differences specifically between the two servers, but the biggest is that, well, Howplay is going to be in a different region, alongside also being roughly 2 days behind in terms of content. Now, honestly, not that big a deal if you're someone that's just playing the game casually, but if you are someone that wants to keep up to date and play constantly and get everything as soon as it comes out, then, well, sticking with Howplay or being on Howplay servers might not actually be that helpful for you, or you may want to hop over to Dark Winter. Now, here's the other thing specifically about the server system, and that's the fact that, as you see right now, the locations that have access to Sunborn slash Dark Winter and Howplay are different, and they depend on region and location where you are in the world. Now, notably, America, Canada, and parts of Africa are obviously on the Sunborn slash Dark Winter server, but this also means that in order to play with said regions or with said countries, the only part or the only server that you can be on is on the Sunborn or Dark Winter server list. Now, unfortunately, as of right now, there is no indicator that Howplay will ever be able to play with Sunborn, from what I understand. Of course, they're always welcome to change that in the future, but as of right now, there is no crossplay specifically between the two servers, which is why it is very important for you to choose the server that either you are playing with your friends with or the one that you want to see members of that region from. Furthermore, we have to talk about the probably most important conversation after you've selected your server and you've made an account, which is the reroll system. Now, credit and thank you again to Pridewin, as I work with them not only for the other games that I make content for, but also for this very kind of goofy and kind of interesting reroll system and process that they've described here. I'll move my camera again here so you guys could see exactly what it refers to. But as you see here, there are two paths, the Hell path and the Heaven path. Now, we'll start with the Heaven path because it's nicer, but this is referring to one of the potential reroll objectives that you can look out for, and the difficulty of it is, well, not that hard. Now, this specific path ignores the super harder or the much harder route of trying to go for a rate up banner, and rather your goal here is to get one or two of the 5-star or SSR characters from the banner, which could take a little bit of time, but ultimately, since the tutorial only takes 10 to roughly 15 minutes from anecdotal experience, it's not that big a deal. However, the thing that you should know about this path is also that, well, despite it still being medium difficulty, the process of recreating an account or restarting the tutorial is not as simple as some gacha or modern gachas where you can delete your account and it resends you back to the beginning. You're going to have to start a whole new, brand new account in order to do this. However, whatever method you choose to do with that will probably take a little bit of time. Now, I'm not going to advocate for or against rerolling specifically, but rather just talking about the different paths, because ultimately, guys, what you choose to do, how you choose to play the game is totally up to you. If you want to spend more time trying to get the perfect character for you, then by all means, feel free to do so. Girls Frontline 2 is by no means a game that you need to hard force everything into, and if you want to play casually, then by all means. But next, we have the Hell path, which honestly does sound pretty accurate for what you are going to have to do if you want to achieve this goal. Now, according to the Hell path, what you have access to is, well, the ability to get a rate up character and also get another character from the standard banner. Now, if that sounds like a lot, It is because, well, it's a rate up character and a standard banner character all on one playthrough or one tutorial run, which you don't get a lot of pulls on, which makes this much, much more difficult. Now, in terms of how long it'll take for you to do this, again, it still is a 10 to 12-minute sort of run, but honestly, going through this process will probably put you back a couple days minimum. So if you're someone that wants to keep up to date again with what's going on in the game or want to be updated currently with the state of the game once it launches, you might not want to go down the hell path specifically. That being said, though, on the topic of rerolling, you may be curious about what characters you have access to for pulling and rerolling. And well, in most cases, the characters that you should be rerolling for are Tololo, who's the lady on the lady right here, and then also Qiang Yu. I'm sorry, Qiang Lu. This character down over here. These two characters are fantastic for reroll options, and honestly, if you have access to them through whatever means, or get access to them through whatever means, you have a pretty good starting account. Now, in terms of who will be available for limited rate up at the start of the game, you do have access to, well, pulling for a Suomi, but again, I don't know if you want to go down to the 7th layer of hell to do so. Now, ultimately, these characters have a lot of value to them, including, well, making autoplay or making a lot of content much easier for you to clear, but do keep in mind that both of the characters that you're seeing on screen right now are damage dealers. Now, before we go into team composition, or before we go any further about team composition, do know that Girls Frontline 2 is a game that focuses primarily on team compositions, not just on the power or strength of certain characters individually. And as you'll see later, it is the sort of game where you may have several different team compositions with several different elements in order to synergize or defeat certain compositions. On that note, though, it is worth also mentioning that certain stages can be brute forced, but when fighting against later content, including bosses that are just one opponent, just one character, it's not like there's multiple waves, it is much more difficult to try and brute force content as opposed to before. Now, moving along, we should talk about stamina because, well, that's the thing that most people are probably curious about. And in terms of stamina, when you start off the game, there are a couple things to consider. Number one, the main story does actually cost a decent amount of stamina to clear through, but because you get stamina every time that you level up, it shouldn't be that big of an issue, though it does cost you stamina to clear, of course. Now, the other thing that you should know is that there is a resin system, which is these access keys, if I'm not mistaken, which give you, I believe, 60 stamina every time that you consume it or exchange them. But every day, I don't know what the exact conversion of time is in some other games, but every day you gain access to roughly 240 energy, which is cool. I believe it's 240. Something or somewhere I've read there was something about 180 energy being given out for something. I'm not exactly sure what that is. If it's not 240, that's a little weird, but I'm pretty sure it's 240 every day. 180, please don't shoot me if that's not the case. However, in terms of the stamina, you may also be curious about what is worth spending your stamina on early, and that's actually upgrading your characters. Now, in terms of general advice for Girls Frontline 2, one of the major things you want to do is get a small core of characters that you can kind of prioritize and invest in, specifically because, well, upgrading characters will cost a bit or a decent amount, especially after level 30, but up until level 30, the cost to upgrade characters is not that high, and therefore, if you want to mix and mash or try to do some trials or try to see what content or what characters synergize or feel best to you, feel free to do so. And of course, through upgrading characters, that's totally fine. But character upgrades and upgrading the core squad that you have so that you can clear through the story quicker is what I and most others will also recommend to you, just because, well, no levels, no kill. Now, the other thing that we need to talk about regarding combat and play is autoplay. Now, I'm sure you guys have heard content or heard commentary about how this game feels similar to XCOM and there's autoplay, and don't worry, it's a very casual game, and you would be right, kind of. The main reason why the autoplay is a concern for me, at least, and I'd like to bring it up, is because as someone that, hey, admittedly and honestly, I don't even play games like Star Rail without going on autoplay in most cases, the autoplay in this game is not actually that clever or that smart. It's not super intelligent in terms of what you should be using on autoplay. And something that I've noticed through all the content and all the betas that I've seen and participated in is the fact that autoplaying is something that you would likely do after the game is done or after you've already completed through all the content and you're trying to go back and finish something that, well, is super underleveled compared to your characters. If it doesn't matter, if the level of the characters or the content difficulty doesn't matter for you, autoplay will definitely suffice and will be clearable in almost all cases. However, if you're regular or if you're equally matched or kind of around the same level as the content you're trying to clear, truth be told, the autoplay is not something that I'd really rely on. And in that case, maybe rely on manualing in some cases, but as we'll see in the future, or as the game comes out, or as more and more info comes out, we'll see just how good or how bad, or maybe if they'll do any adjustments to autoplay as the game gets closer and closer to release. Now, the final thing I want to talk about is also in regards to combat, and that's the rewind feature. This is something that honestly I haven't seen in any other game since I don't know if I've ever seen a feature like this in a gacha game, but it's actually really cool, especially for a strategy-esque gacha game, and that's a rewind feature. Now, a rewind feature might sound like, oh, just restart your mission, but no, this is actually a rewind feature where in the middle of combat or in the middle of a mission, you can rewind back certain turns or certain phases so that you can then make the right play. If you accidentally left clicked or you misclicked for whatever reason, you can undo that mistake and go back and complete whatever activity you were trying to without fear of having to redo and spend the rest of your time trying to clear it. This is also really helpful for, well, if you ever are playing with friends and you're trying to guide your friends down a certain direction, you can rewind back to whatever part of the stage that you had made the mistake for and obviously clear. Just a very random thing to kind of mention here, but in case you were curious about the content or the level of difficulty of content, the game with rewinding and honestly with the characters that we'll have access to at launch shouldn't be too difficult in terms of clearing and getting to the end of the story. So just keep that in mind as another tip that you can look into. But guys, that's honestly going to be my 5 tips, or these are basic things that you should know about Girls Frontline 2 before you start the game. In case you were curious, as of, well, whenever the game releases, which should be, and again, maybe 19 hours from now, I think, as of the time of the release of the video, we will have access to the rate up banners and all the new characters that, well, Girls Frontline has to offer. And in that case, I would definitely recommend, if you have access to her, a pull for Suomi. She's one of the best characters that we've really honestly seen. Usable still in China, as I'm sure you've heard 1,000 times. But in case you're curious about what teams will work, using, honestly, again, any of the teams that I listed or any of the characters in any of the teams that you end up using with like Tololo, I give up, and Suomi and Qiangliu, apologies again, any of these characters will definitely accelerate your gameplay or accelerate the strength of or the pace at which you clear the game. And in that case, or in those cases, make sure to pick up those characters if you want. Girls Frontline 2, again, make sure to check it out when it comes out. This is not sponsored, in case you guys were curious too. This is just a game that I'm really interested in because the dorms and the interactions, and well, if I'm going to be playing a game, I might as well cover it, right? Anyways, guys, that's going to be it for this video. Thanks again for watching. If you'd like to check out the rest of my content, feel free to do so through all the socials in my Discord and in the description of the video. And yeah, I'll catch you guys on the next one though. Stay safe, stay healthy. Good night.